Off Track West here on day 9 of Fire Emblem February. This video will be a direct sequel to the Doorway to Destiny video, where we look at chapter 5 of Genealogy for Holy War, so check that out if you have yet to see it. We last left off after the Battle of Belhala, where Sigurd's army were defeated at the hands of Arvis, who took advantage of them literally conquering Jugdrill and the scheming lords of Granville by wiping them off the chessboard, leading to the rise of the Granville Empire. This was something initially peaceful, but soon, with Prince Julius, the Empire began brutal practices where they enslaved people and made a practice of hunting and rounding up children for ritual sacrifices. All of Jugdrill began to suffer under the brutal repression of the Empire. Isaac in particularly were under military occupation by the Dazzle family. The people of Isaac only had one hope: the leader of the Liberation Army, Seliph. Upon discovering the rebels' hideout, the Empire sent forces to take them out. Realizing this, Seliph, Larche, Ulster, and Lana decided that now was the day to fight against Isaac's military occupation, thus challenging the Empire. Firstly, when looking at the map, the choice to start off at Isaac is brilliant. In the last video I explained the importance of Sigurd and Ira's relationship, forming a camaraderie despite being from enemy nations at war with each other. Sigurd's act of kindness in taking in Shannon, the refugee prince, allowed his son to live and grow up in Turnanog because of the relationship they built. The very nation Granville defeated was now his home. Prince Shannon, now like an older brother to Seliph, and the children of Ira, Larche and Ulster, were his childhood friends. Isaac and Shapi's fates were truly connected to one another. Seeing the seeds of Sigurd's kindness have an impact on the future generations is one of the many things that makes this chapter special. Light Inheritors makes the player feel hopeful that our characters can continue where the previous generation had left off. That's even reflected in the gameplay, with this being the first game to introduce Inheritance, and I'd say it does it the best. Their Inheritance system has the child split gross between both their parents. Receive the inventories, usually sons will get their fathers, and daughters will get their mothers. In some cases it switches, and the holy blood of their parents if they had any, literally carrying the legacy of the player in the past generations with them. This is even reflected in the music. From the tense Doorway to Destiny, which uses the leitmotif from the tragic Conversation 3, perfectly captures the feeling of a tense battle, marching towards an unknown end, which ultimately was a tragedy, to the hopeful Inheritors of Light, fitting the title, as the song literally uses horns from Birth of a Holy Knight, and notably has the same melody as Girl of the Spirit Forest, being the map Seliph's parents met. Even the music is telling you Seliph is the literal Light Inheritor. Looking at the map, initially giving us only foreign mountain units is a sharp contrast to Sigurd's first map, which was mostly comprised of mounted units, but both served their purpose very well. Sigurd and Seliph had very different upbringings. with Sigurd being trained in military academy, and Seliph who is trained in hiding with Orphe and Shannon. When we play as Sigurd, we already feel like a powerful knight, while Seliph is admittedly broken and it's very easy for him to get powerful very fast. The stark contrast between Seliph and Sigurd helps bring the players down to Seliph's level, so we feel as small as the Liberation Army does against the Empire. Design-wise though, we're fighting against several unmounted army units in a small open field, which serves its purpose, but it is very admittedly weak. It does allow us to see the strength of Seliph and the twins though. After some combat, we're greeted with the arrival of Orphe, Lester, and Dermot, the rest of our starting characters from Isaac, with Orphe being a warm familiar face to see. This isn't going to be the last time I talk about Orphe's greatness, but seeing the small boy who worships Sigurd, who is an onlooker to the past generation, now be an older man looking over the next generation and leading them as a veteran is great. Once again, as an audience surrogate, we feel exactly like Orphe does. We want these kids to succeed their parents, and we'll be there every step of the way to help them do that. It's also a bittersweet feeling knowing Seliph had Orphe as a father figure and the rest of his friends as a found family when the entire Chopley family other than him died in the previous chapter. Also, Orphe has a mustache. Our boy's a man! He really grew up! Getting through Gonsire's units shouldn't be too difficult at that point. If it is, we have Orphe's Armistead to deal with the many enemies with armor, and the boss, which makes taking the first castle of the second generation a straightforward affair. Once we do take the castle, we're greeted by another familiar face, Lewin, who encourages Seliph in his journey to defeat the Empire and succeed his father, taking the place Orphe did in the last generation, and he leaves us with Julia, whose identity we can easily figure out by looking at her holy blood. Taking the castle leads to the arrival of Arthur and Fie, more future children, both with their own goals. Fie noticeably states she wanted to join the Liberation Army, hearing stories of Sigurd's exploits and wanting to fight alongside his son. Though Sigurd fell against Arvis, his reputation wasn't tarnished. His actions and the impact they still had on other people are something that we could still see in the second generation, with Lester, Lana, and Dermot being examples as he saved their mothers. Sigurd is punished for his chivalry, true, but we feel validated for him in his memory, seeing how meaningful his actions were to the next generation. Following that, we have Johan and Javier, both attacking Gonsai from the west and the south. Both are axe units and brothers, children of Danon, who are in charge of the military occupation of Isaac, but are also refusing to take part of the child hunts. Due to their overwhelming horniness for Larche, we can recruit one of them with their armies coming on our side too, but we have to fight the other brother in their army. After taking both castles and being charged by several axe mounts, the final enemy we end up fighting is Danon, who is the father of Johan Johavier, son of Lombard. He shouldn't be too difficult because of Orphe, and any other units who would have gotten good training this chapter should be able to deal with him. This battle for Seliph is the first steps for the Liberation Army, fighting for Isaac's freedom, and thematically it's perfect. This works as a follow-up to Sigurd vs Lombard, but also at the very beginning of the game. Granville and Isaac war ended with Isaac being occupied and subjugated by Granville, even before it was an empire. And Seliph's first act as the Sign of Light is liberating Isaac's people who have become his own. Even though Seliph is unsure of himself and is facing the return of a brutal empire, the hopefulness of these characters and the desire to succeed their parents with us as players sharing part of their legacy is what ties this chapter together to be a really good introduction to the second half of Genealogy of the Holy War.